Greetings shippers, welcome back, and it's time to take another look at the Harry Potter realm from a lot of different angles. We've talked about Harry Potter ships and happenings a decent amount of times on this channel. There are just a lot of moments when it comes to Harry Potter. Moments in general, and then also specifically shipping moments. So I thought it would be interesting to compile some of these shipping moments all together and take a look at them. They represent a great many things. There's gonna be things that didn't actually happen. Things that were at first well received and now have turned around and are not. And just this entire list, if you look at it, can really highlight the shift in fandom culture and perceptions of the author and just a wide array of things. Or perhaps it means nothing. That's up to you. Today I want to take a look at 10 times that J.K. Rowling shocked shippers. There's gonna be some positive ones there, I promise. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please do follow on social media to stay up to date, know when we're streaming, and just come on over and chit chat about fandom. It's a good time, I swear. At the time of this recording, we recently talked about Lunary, the pairing of Harry Potter and Luna Lovegood, which was quite a juggernaut back in the day and still enjoys some dedicated shippers to this day at the time of this recording. So if you missed that, you can check it out by clicking the card, or of course the link will be down below, as well as links to a wide array of different Harry Potter shipping vids. Wolfstar, Fancasting, Drarry, Dramione, Scorbus, Fanversations, everything. All of the Harry Potter. And now, we're about to add to it. Side note, pretty much most of these incidents are worthy of their own video expanding upon what happened. Their own moments in fandom history. So if there's anything here that you want to hear more about, let me know down below. Let's start off with something lighthearted in the 10 slot. We're gonna go back to 2007, post the release of the final book in the series, The Deathly Hallows. After the release of that book, fans had lots of questions for things that they didn't fully feel were tied up. And they just wanted to know more, as so many of them were quite saddened that it had all come to an end. Not all were satisfied, but many were. A sentiment that has changed over time. A lot has changed over time. However, in 2007, J.K. Rowling made an announcement that would change the shipping landscape, and also just the Harry Potter fandom landscape. This was the announcement of the canonicity of Grindeldore, the pairing of Albus Dumbledore and Gellert Grindelwald. We've talked about Grindeldore and the history of it on this channel, so if you missed it, then of course you know the drill. Click the card or link down below. Now, there had been shippers who were circling this pairing or actively producing for it before this announcement, as much that could accrue with how quickly the announcement came after the release of the novel. However, once that occurred, this ship blew up and became for many a fandom favorite. While there were those at the time and to this day who wish it had been Wolfstar, the pairing was pretty much universally well received. Of course, there was homophobic backlash, but from within the fandom itself, it was pretty much positive, although there were some who felt that it didn't really matter, or that perhaps the author shouldn't be adding to her text post-release. Again, a sentiment that would become much more prevalent later. We're going to be coming back to this one. It's going to reappear later on. However, for that time, this was a huge boost for Grindeldore shippers, and because of that, there is a wide array of works for this pairing, and a very solidly established fanon. For a little while after the initial announcement, J.K. Rowling would go on to give further details about this relationship, stating that it was manipulative and one-sided, and that Grindelwald had been using Dumbledore. However, this interview is very often ignored, oftentimes in favor of the more positive headcanons that people have about these two. It must also be noted that this was the first actual canon LGBT+ representation within the Harry Potter series, something that was a big deal at the time, again, initially received positively, and later looked down upon. Still, for those who were there and remember it, it was quite the moment. This news was even published in local newspapers, like my local little suburban Canadian newspaper. It was in there. It was a big deal. So let's move from positivity to just a general sense of malaise at number 9. We're going to talk about the lack of confirmation about Wolfstar and Sirius Black's sexuality, as well as Remus Lupin's. Wolfstar has long been a huge pairing in the Harry Potter fandom. Since the release of the 3rd book, there have been Wolfstar shippers. Many fans feel that this relationship was one of the most significant of the series, and that it deserved to be so much more, and that there was groundwork laid for it to be so much more. And it is one of the relationships that J.K. Rowling still gets asked about to this day. Now, there are people who can hold multiple pairings in their heads. The idea that Remus could be with Tonks, but perhaps in the past had been with Sirius. This has also led to questions about the character's sexualities, especially when it was revealed that the actor who was playing Remus Lupin in the films was playing the role initially as a closeted gay man, as that was how the director told him to play the role. Alfonso Cuarón, in the rehearsals without J.K. Rowling's knowledge, told me that my character was in fact gay, so I'd been playing a part like a gay man for quite a long time, until it turned out that I indeed got married to Tonks. I changed my whole performance after that, just saw it as a phase he went through. through. On this relationship, J.K. Rowling has never really had much to say, which is absolutely her prerogative. However, many fans find this odd when she has been so vocal about so many other ships. This has led to just the general miscontent and questions about why she won't answer these questions specifically. It has left fans to speculate, some more angrily than others. An example of this can be seen in a 2016 Twitter incident, where some believe that when J.K. Rowling gave a list of answers to a certain bunch of questions, that she was disavowing the sexuality of Sirius Black, which led to a brief J.K. Rowling is cancelled party, which for those not in the know or who are just not using Twitter, this is typically what happens when fans feel that a creator has made a huge misstep, or what they perceive to be a misstep. This blew over, however, it would not be the first Twitter controversy that J.K. Rowling would have to endure, and probably will not be the last. She's very vocal on Twitter. 8 is going to take us to, well, there's just a lot to talk about here. 8 is the Cursed Child and Scorbus. Now, we've talked about Scorbus before, so again, you know the drill, card, link. And in that we discussed how many fans felt that there was a lot of subtextual coding within the play. Now, mileage on this does vary, although for those who feel there is coding, they are very vocal about it, and many think pieces have been written to that effect. As a result, this is where much of the backlash has arisen from. Disappointed fans whose views on Harry Potter may have shifted over time, or they may have come to it in a different time. And discourse, and the way discourse is performed in fandom, has endured massive shifts within the span of just a few years. Quite rapidly, almost as rapidly as it has garnered popularity on the internet. In general, J.K. Rowling has received a lot of backlash for The Cursed Child. For while she did not co-author it, she did approve of it. Indeed, that's why this is only at number 8 on this shipping list, because people have so many more problems with it than just Scorbus. That's just scratching the surface. For some, that may be their biggest problem with it, but for others, it's so much more. Indeed, for some, the mere fact that she considers it to be canon has angered them. There are lots of places you can go online which will disavow that The Cursed Child is canon. However, unfortunately, depending upon who you're talking to, J.K. Rowling has confirmed herself that she considers it to be canon, and Potter more recently at the time of this recording added it to its timeline. So for those who disavow it, they are angered to note that they must now actively work in the realm of AU. The Cursed Child play premiered in 2016, and the play was also released to the public and was also published in script format. Some feel that this moment indicated a large shift in how J.K. Rowling viewed her fan base, especially after all the abuse hurled her way, as the tone in her interviews leading up to The Cursed Child and after it do vary. Initially, there is quite a bit of excitement about the project and to be returning to the Harry Potter universe and bringing more of the world to fans. In statements before the play, she had things like this to say: "I never set out to build a big community, but I don't think there is a writer alive who wouldn't want to have that many people react to their work. That's what happened. People came inside the world with me." However, afterwards, there is quite the shift. For example, in this interview in 2017, the interviewer asks, "Do you care what the public says?" To which Rowling replies, "Do I care? Do you know, I'm gonna be very honest. Yes, I do, and no, I don't. So yes, I do. Of course I do. For me, I always go back to readers. So the fact that people love the books and the movies as well, and that those stories meant so much to so many people, that is everything to me. No writer is gonna tell you differently. I have phenomenal love and respect for those people. Because it turned out I could tell a story. That's all I've ever wanted to do in my life, and they and their enthusiasm gave that to me. So yes, I care hugely. On the no, I don't side, I think as a writer or any kind of creative person, you actually do have to hold tight to your vision. And ultimately, you have to be able to look in the mirror and say, did I do that for the right reasons? Did I do it to the best of my ability? Am I happy with the result? Well, I know I'm never going to pander. I know genuinely. I know full well I have limited time on this earth. I have no interest whatsoever in doing certain things that I know would be very popular with the fandom. And I think the fandom watching this will know exactly what I mean, because they know what they keep asking for, but there's nothing there for me creatively, even though I know they'd all buy it. Here we see a lot more assertion of authorial rights and intent, and some feel this hardening of the lines is a direct result of the fandom, although some feel that this is all the cycle, as they feel that the fandom became emboldened because of how J.K. Rowling interacted with them in the first place. Some blame this on the shift of the fandom atmosphere in general, as when J.K. Rowling first began interacting with fans, the landscape was very different than it is now. As a result, some feel that she is being treated very unfairly, as she is simply acting the way she always has, and is the world that has shifted around her, while others feel that she has always inputted herself too much into her world post its completion, and that at some point, even an author or creator must step back. Again, as mentioned, mileage varies. Debunking some statements at number 7. There have been rumors for years that J.K. Rowling confirmed Hermione could have potential. If you ever mention Hermione anywhere, it is likely that you will see at least one comment that will pop up saying that J.K. Rowling herself confirmed that it could happen. These comments have been popping up for years, and I took it upon myself to track them so that I can firmly bring to you the fact that this never occurred. This rumor has a couple of big surges. The second second occurs in 2014, which is also a year that has a lot of canonical information released by J.K. Rowling about how she feels about certain ships, pairings, couples, what she wished she had done, what she wished she hadn't done, etc. As a result, it was able to slip in with all of these under the radar, and some took it as an official statement. You will find this on a variety of sources, but one of the sources where it was spread around the most proficiently was Goodreads. Goodreads is a site for book aficionados to compile lists of books to read, review books, share books, form book clubs. It is a huge hub for book fandom. Here a user states that they have found concrete proof that J.K. Rowling does indeed confirm this pairing. The excited shipper who found this clearly thought that they had stumbled upon a hidden gem, stating, "This was too good news. I had to share it. I don't know when it happened. I might be pathetically outdated, but Rowling said, I considered for a long time a romance between Hermione and Draco. They're both strong-minded people, and Hermione could have helped pull Draco towards the light, been his saving grace, much like Lily was to Snape. However, in the end, I thought it was too much of a plot twist, and decided that Ron was her best match." Wow, my OTP just got confirmed by the author herself. Jo also said the reason Draco behaved so horribly towards Hermione was because he had a crush on her. Seriously? Hyperventilating. However, underneath, amidst the excitement, you see people asking for sources. The sources are never provided, and eventually the original poster comes back and states that it appears the interview from which this statement was taken was deleted. Upon this, people, and myself included, took it upon themselves to dig even deeper. Eventually, the statement was traced back to a post made in 2007 on an independent archive, one in which the users had to log in to be able to change or edit anything. This original post also claims to be from an interview, but also has no link and no way to go back to it and no way to confirm anything. As a result, this very much appears to be fan wish fulfillment. It's not clear if it was trolling or something that someone just wanted to spread around, or what exactly happened to prompt the initial post. However, this occurs in fandom all of the time. So now it must be noted that one must be wary when reading fandom statements, especially something that appears to confirm or deny something. Always try and track it back and see what you can find. Don't be afraid to ask a person for a source. Even if they can't link you back to an interview or direct quote, at the very least they can send you back to where they found it so you can dig further. This happens more in some fandoms than others. At the time of this recording, one of the huge fandoms that this has happened and still continues to happen, though this will soon dwindle, is Voltron. It is not uncommon for people to claim that they have statements from writers, DMs, private messages, or just statements that claim that their ship, whatever it may be, has been supported, validated, or vilified. However, when pressed, very few people can provide sources. As a result, you will come across a lot of very heartfelt statements that sound as if they could be true or that they have to be backed up because the person saying it is so convinced and feels that it is credible. However, always track it back because these things have a way of circulating through fandom forever. Case in point, this Dramione statement. You will still find people who will use these unsourced quotes as proof, and even if you do come back and say that it never happened, they won't listen to you. It's a case of confirmation bias. At the end of the day, it's not the hugest deal, and a lot of times people may be aware that it's probably not accurate, but they just want to enjoy their ship. However, for those who are seeking out accurate information, be wary. This kind of thing happens all the time. Going back to some actual statements made in 2007 for number 6. In 2007, following the conclusion of the book series, fans were very open about asking J.K. Rowling their questions, as she herself had always been very open with them, even if not directly, by answering questions in interviews. And over the years, she had begun to interact with fans more and more. As a result, most fans felt comfortable to ask about their favorite pairings, headcanons, and what exactly happened to them. Now, a fan favorite couple by the series conclusion was the pairing of Neville and Luna, and many felt that there were implications that the two ended up together, or that they should have ended up together. So in 2007, someone asked. Now, Rowling had actually been asked about this couple before, and initially she had said absolutely not. However, in the 2007 interview, she mentioned that over time, her feelings towards them had mellowed, and that she started to feel a pull, but that she left the relationship open because she felt it would be too neat. It was the too neat statement that bothered these shippers, as some felt that these two misfits belonged together, and they felt that it was unfair of her to say that this couple would be too neat, but that some of the other couples who ended up being endgame would not be. However, later statements made about those couples would put many shippers in each other's company when they decided that perhaps they needed to just not listen to exactly what the author had to say anymore, although it would take years for these shippers to enter each other's clubs. 9 days after the release of the Deathly Hallows, Rowling would then come out with the statement that Luna would ultimately end up with Newt Scamander's grandson, Rolf Scamander. Something else that fans were confused by is they felt that it came out of nowhere, although there are many who accepted her rationale that Luna and Neville were not exactly compatible, as at this moment in time, people were still very much of the idea that it was Rowling's world and she could do what she wanted with it. For many, they will always have fandom, but some feel that this was one of the mistakes when it came to canon couples. Still, in terms of shipper anger, based on what we still have to come, this was mild. Halfway point brings us to Draco Draco and to the year 2014, which is when a lot of fandom announcements were made and a lot shifted in terms of how the fandom began to perceive J.K. Rowling. Let's start off with statements made about Draco. Draco had long been a fan favorite, a sentiment that had indeed increased with the release of the movies, and many fans' crushes on Tom Felton. However, that is by no means the sole reason for that character's popularity. Many people felt that Draco exemplified depth and that there was a lot to his character that needed to be explored, and that he was treated unfairly compared to certain other characters who ended up getting redeemed, while he was not exactly given the same treatment. And many felt that over the years, J.K. Rowling had made certain derogatory statements towards him that indicated that she did not care for him too much as a character. And in 2014, she came out in an interview stating that she was disturbed that there were girls who found Draco attractive, and that in fact, she was concerned about them. For all this, Draco remains a person of dubious morality in the 7 published books, and I've often had cause to remark on how unnerved I've been by the number of girls who fell for this particular fictional character, although I do not discount the appeal of Tom Felton, who plays Draco brilliantly in the films, and ironically is about the nicest person you could meet. Draco has all the dark glamour of the anti-hero. Girls are very apt to romanticize such people. All of this left me in the unenviable position of pouring cold common sense on ardent readers' daydreams, as I told them rather severely that Draco was not concealing a heart of gold under all that sneering and prejudice, and that no, he and Harry were not destined to end up best friends. In an article by The Telegraph detailing the interaction, the author paraphrases Rowling, stating, "Draco's wand, however, with a core of unicorn hints to be the potential for good. This was symbolic," Rowling writes, "of some unextinguished good at the heart of Draco, although she stresses the risk of rekindling unhealthy fantasies." The original Pottermore page on which these statements were made has since been deleted. However, these articles linger on, and she has since gone on to joke about what she thinks about these pairings with Tom Felton. Basically, the idea was that it was not healthy to fantasize about Draco. This could tangentially be applied to Draco X reader fics, of which there were an abundance and of which J.K. Rowling was aware. And it could also be applied to pairing fics that involved Draco. As a result, this is another thing that people feel debunks number 7, as Rowling has made her sentiments on Draco and relationships quite clear. At this point, some began to question Rowling's views of her own character, for they argued that the reason that they cared for Draco wasn't simply because Tom Felton was hot or because he was an anti-hero bad boy, and that there was so much more there, and how were they seeing something so different in the character than Rowling was? It must be noted that as an author, one knows one's own vision, and also has access to more information than the fandom does, in terms of little headcanon details that the author will often keep to themselves, that helps them flesh out their world, but does not necessarily need to be shared. As a result, it is very easy for authors to get locked into seeing their characters one way, their way, which absolutely makes sense, and many feel is as it should be. However, others feel that authors need to be flexible at the very least to entertaining the idea that other people will have different reads, even if they do not agree with them. And some feel that the author's headcanons need to remain with themselves, as by introducing them out into the fandom landscape, it can create contention and confusion. While others argue that fans need to be less sensitive. Let me know what you think about that, but don't worry, at the end we're gonna have lots of questions. 4 is gonna swing us back to number 10, just a little over a decade later. We're gonna go to 2018 and the Yates interview that stirred up so much anger about Fantastic Beasts 2: The Crimes of Grindelwald. Yates is slated to direct all 5 of the Fantastic Beasts films, and directed the last 4 Harry Potter films. It was stated by Yates in this interview that Dumbledore would not be explicitly gay, and that set off a firestorm, a lot of which had to do with Rowling's initial statement made in 2007, as some felt that this was a direct contradiction and were confused as to what exactly was going to occur. Now, many felt that fans jumped the gun here, and that they needed to wait to see what exactly occurred, as the Fantastic Beasts series shall span 5 films, and things do need to build upon each other. However, coupled with the statement and the sentiment about Rowling's works that had begun to change over the years, some felt that that was not good enough, and that things needed to be explicit, and that they had been promised something that they were not going to be given. Something some fans felt they had also been promised at the beginning of the Fantastic Beasts film series. As in 2016, when discussing what the relationship would be like between these 2 characters, she stated, "I can't tell you everything I would like to say because this is obviously a 5-part story, so there's lots to unpack in that relationship. You will see Dumbledore as a younger man, and quite a troubled man. He wasn't always the sage. We'll see him at that formative period of his life. As far as his sexuality is concerned, watch this space." Mileage still varies after the release of the film, with some feeling that it was executed perfectly and they can't wait to see more, and they feel it was very accurate to Rowling's world and vision, and others feeling that it was not enough, or that it could have been executed slightly differently. However, at the time in early 2018 when this occurred, Rowling initially clapped back. That is to say, she responded angrily, as many people after this interview set out to attack her directly. As a result, she tweeted, "Being sent abuse about an interview that didn't involve me, about a screenplay I wrote, but which none of the angry people have read, which is part of a 5-movie series that's only one installment in. It's obviously tons of fun. But you know, what's even more fun? Referring to the mute gif above. While this did not exactly blow over, focus would shift to different issues that people would then come to have with the film. However, for many, this had made Grindeldore a contentious issue, as Grindeldore, pretty much being the only canon LGBT+ representation at that time, meant a lot to many people, and they wanted to see it front and center. As a result of all of this, many went back to really question her initial announcement, and it must be noted that some had been doing that anyway, as a result of some of the statements that we're about to cover. Some felt that J.K. Rowling was simply giving out tidbits of information to keep herself in the limelight, or that she just couldn't stop being involved in her fandom and needed to step back, while others felt that this was unfair, as in many instances it was the fans who were seeking her out and asking her opinions on these matters, and they would deem it odd if she were to suddenly stop answering after answering all this time. A situation of being damned if you do, and damned if you don't. Though others argue that the way she speaks to fans is far too casual, which again some counter as unfair, as in previous years, her casualness with fans was something that she was celebrated for. The discussion on this is ongoing and will likely remain so, as at the time of this recording, there are still 3 films as of yet to be released. Number 3. For this one, we have to step a bit away from Rowling herself and towards her legal team and her PR assistant and those who make statements for her. And we're going to be talking about fan fiction. And we need to go back in time to the year 2003. By the year 2003, Harry Potter fanfiction online was an absolute juggernaut. Harry Potter had come up through the fanfiction boom that occurred on the internet during the rise of digital fandom in the late 90s. And it had staked its claim, and many felt that it had been responsible or the harbinger of most of the fanfiction online. It must be noted that many pieces of media contributed to the rise of fanfiction, but Harry Potter helped speed it up because of its massive popularity. By 2003, Harry Potter fics were hosted not only on consolidated fandom sites like fanfiction.net, but also had many independent archives. Indeed, most were independent archives, as that was still how much fanfiction was collected at that time. And they were varied, and there were a lot of fics. And of course, as with anything, they varied in rating and content. From male-male pairings to het pairings to fem/slash pairings to gen to smut, you had everything. And it appeared that J.K. Rowling was not exactly pleased with the smut, and some feel made moves to make sure that it was removed. Now, sources say that Rowling had given her blessing on fanfiction, and indeed she did seem appreciative of it. However, whispers from her lawyers in 2003 had led some people to have questions, and an official statement in 2004 raised more, with a spokesman for her literary agent stating, J.K. Rowling's reaction is that she is very flattered by the fact there is such great interest in her Harry Potter series, and that people take the time to write their own stories. Her concern would be to make sure that it remains a non-commercial activity, to ensure fans are not exploiting, and it is not being published in the strict sense of traditional print publishing. He said writers had to ensure that the stories were not obscene, and were credited to the author, and not to J.K. Rowling. The books may be getting older, but they are still aimed at young children. If young children were to stumble on Harry Potter in an X-rated story, that would be a problem. While it is clear that J.K. Rowling is quite fond of fan culture and fanfiction in general, it is unclear where exactly she stands nowadays on smut. And it is a result of moments like this, not just her lawyers, but the lawyers of Anne Rice and authors of that ilk who very much had negative things to say about fanfiction that resulted in some of the earliest purges. For those who are not aware or were not there, fandom purges occurred where massive amounts of fan-created content were deleted for a variety of reasons. Some of it copyright-based, but others for a more puritanical, moral-based reason, such as this, it being too smutty, and the idea of what if the children stumble upon it, which oftentimes, especially in the days of early Harry Potter, ignored how many youths were themselves writing fiction. It also, due to the makeup of fanfiction content, particularly at that time, ended up deleting a lot of queer content, specifically male-male pairings. Indeed, these arguments were often countered by people who spent immense amount of times in fandom, saying that it was very difficult to catalog who was in the fandom, what age they were, and that policing that could present a very dangerous precedent. And that many of these sites did employ age restrictions, and even if they did not, they had clearly defined rating systems. As people, even youth, have agency. And that there was room and space for these outlets and for these expressions, and that they were not inherently bad or deviant, and that there was something to be explored there, and that indeed for most fans participating, there is a separation between reality and the content that allowed them to create it, and that that was necessary to be maintained. contained, and that it was necessary to keep a wall between reality, escapism, and the fandom space, and to allow people to live within it. To be inspired by, repelled by, or even at times validated, but never to go so far as to lose oneself. These arguments may sound very familiar to some at the time of this recording, as many feel and fear that perhaps the internet is heading back into an age of a second purge, especially post the Tumblr purge of late 2018, wherein Tumblr decided to disavow itself of all adult not safe for work content, ostensibly under the idea of banning child porn and porn bots, neither of which have actually been removed. Some fear that this policing of the fandom space has returned, only under a different guise, but that the moral undercurrents and themes still very much remain the same, even the argument of protecting the children, and they worry that they will see another mass deletion of fandom content. Of course, only time will tell. On the flip side, it must be noted that some believe that this is a good thing, and that people do need to take fandom and fandom spaces more seriously and be more mindful of what happens within them, and that reality and fiction intersect in more ways than people think. What concerns many fans about this purge versus the previous purge is that the previous purge was largely creator-driven or outside-driven, that being people on the outside of fandom looking in, people who might not fully understand it or who for their own reasons wanted to control it, for feelings of ownership or other reasons. However, this one many fear is being driven from the inside, and some fear that that will make it far more dangerous if it does occur. Are you scared yet? Are you worried? No, seriously, if you are worried, let me know down below. Or do you think everybody's panicking? Something that made a lot of shippers panic at the time was number 2. We have to go back to the aforementioned 2014, the year that everything changed. Even for those who are not very involved in the Harry Potter fandom or fan fiction or shipping, they probably heard about this incident. This was an interview that simultaneously discussed two things, and we need to discuss them separately because they had separate reactions. First off was the statement that J.K. Rowling believed that Harry and Hermione had the potential to be together. Now, over the years post the series and even during it, the pairing of Harry and Hermione had begun to gain traction. While initially pairings such as Harry and Luna had the upper hand, as the books went on and also with the release of the films, especially with the release of the films, Hermione had begun to gain a lot of ground within fandom and become very credible. In fact, by 2014, it was very much in competition with Ron-Hermione in many people's minds. Many felt that the films had made a much stronger case for Hermione than the books did, but that they had largely been translating the text, and that when they went back and looked at the books again, they saw more of those moments. Well, of course, there were many who felt that the two had a sibling relationship and they couldn't view it any other way. So when J.K. Rowling made her statement saying that perhaps this was a credible couple, fandom exploded, especially as it came after she expressed some doubts about Ron and Hermione. She stated, "In some ways, Hermione and Harry are a better fit, and I'll tell you something very strange. When I wrote Hallows, I felt this quite strongly when I had Hermione and Harry together in the tent. I hadn't told Steve Kloves that, and when he wrote the script, he felt exactly the same thing at exactly the same point. And actually, I liked that scene in the film, because it was articulating something I hadn't said, but I had felt. I really liked it, and I thought that it was right. I think you do feel the ghost of what could have been in that scene." This resulted in a new phenomenon. Whereas the tones of earlier articles when J.K. Rowling had made statements had at the very least been deferential, this led to a burst of articles stating that she was just flat out wrong. Something relatively new within the Harry Potter fandom, a complete rejection of a statement given. While on the other side, some absolutely rejoiced, this being largely Hermione shippers who felt that they had been validated and recognized by the creator, and that they now had a legitimacy. Some on the outside of either pairing felt that either reaction was a problem, and that this indicated that J.K. Rowling needed to step back from her universe and stop putting this kind of input into it, as it was making it volatile, and that perhaps it was best to leave the fandom alone. This ties into and leads us directly to number 1, the moment of greatest Harry Potter outrage that echoes to this day. Even if new outrage may come, people will always remember this one. And if one does something so simple as look up J.K. Rowling and shippers, this is largely what one will find, that and number 2. The idea that Ron and Hermione was a bad idea, and that they probably wouldn't work out as a couple. What I will say is that I wrote the Hermione/Ron relationship as a form of wish fulfillment. That's how it was conceived, really, for reasons that have very little to do with literature, and far more to do with me clinging to the plot as I first imagined it, Hermione with Ron. I know, I'm sorry, I can hear the rage and fury it might cause some fans, but if I'm absolutely honest, distance has given me perspective on that. It was a choice I made for very personal reasons, not for reasons of credibility. Am I breaking people's hearts by saying this? I hope not. It was a young relationship. I think the attraction itself is plausible, but the combative side of it, I'm not sure you could have got over that in an adult relationship. There was too much fundamental incompatibility. I can't believe we are saying all this. This is Potter hearsay. Or maybe she and Ron will be alright, with a bit of counseling, you know? I wonder what happens at Wizard Marriage Counseling. They'll probably be fine. He needs to work on his self-esteem issues, and she needs to work on being a little less critical. When these statements were made, fans absolutely exploded. Ron and Hermione had been the canon couple for many, many fans. The couple that they were growing with, the couple that they were looking forward to, and in many ways, yes, a form of wish fulfillment, but not one that they were unhappy with. As many readers and filmgoers alike had felt that Ron and Hermione had obviously been endgame from early on, and as a result were just waiting for it, with an understanding that the other pairings would most likely end up being fanon. Although of course, as always, this pairing did have its detractors. But on the whole, they were fine with Ron and Hermione being wish fulfillment. It felt very much like the happy ending that they deserved after everything that they went through in the series, and many people felt that they had had the most developed relationship, even if it was cliche. So to hear these statements from the author was very disappointing for many, and for some it began to create a permanent disconnect. As mentioned in 2014 in these statements was the true beginning of the fandom schism, where many fans decided that they simply weren't going to listen anymore, and that the author was indeed dead, and that perhaps they might know the work better than the author did. As many began to note that they spent more time with the work, as any creator must inevitably move on to other projects, do other things, and cannot spend every second of their day immersed in work. By contrast, fanfic authors in particular were often going back to look at facts and do research and spending a lot of time in the universe and really getting in deep with the characters. So some felt that perhaps over time, the fandom deserved to take more ownership, or at the very least that perhaps they now had a better grasp of the world and could proceed accordingly. Indeed, discussions began to arise about the idea that maybe J.K. Rowling should license her world out, and that other people could write novels within it, similar to a Halo or a Star Trek or a Star Wars, expanding upon the universe. Some also found their disconnect to be a necessity, as they were very much canon-based shippers, and the fact that J.K. Rowling said that this couple could have trouble very much altered how they looked at it, and hence altered their enjoyment of fandom, and also for some of the source material itself. And so for some canon-based shippers, this became the moment where they broke away from that, and instead became more firm within their own fanon. Mileage varies on whether this is a good or a bad thing, or whether it is immaterial so long as the two sides remain cordial. At this point, it had been 7 years since the final book and 3 years since the last film. Indeed, after this moment, many of J.K. Rowling's actions began to be examined through a different lens, such as the apologies for character deaths, the constant small updates on Pottermore, the new North American houses. All of a sudden, for many fans, things took on a bit of a different light. This was a huge fandom moment, and it led to a very large reignition of a fandom war, with many people who now felt that they had been legitimized or delegitimized. It was not the finest moment, and for those who were on Tumblr at the time, they most likely remember it. Although again, Tumblr can be very varied, so perhaps you didn't see any of this. So those were 10 times that J.K. Rowling shocked shippers, mostly angered, sadly. Were you involved in any of these incidents? What do you think of the ones that were presented? Are there any where you think that shippers are being utterly ridiculous, or the contrary, that J.K. Rowling was overstepping her bounds, or something perhaps more unique and complex to each situation? For me, the most fascinating thing is seeing the change that has occurred in the Harry Potter fandom over time, especially as someone who has been part of it from the very beginning. And it continues to change, and will continue to do so. So as mentioned at the beginning, if you want to hear more about any of these incidents, please do let me know. I'm always fascinated to dig a little deeper, as it were. I have a very strong fondness for this series, and not just a nostalgia-based one either, an actual fondness for the works, and especially for the fandom. Perhaps more so even for the fandom than for the works themselves, although of course, without the works, the fandom would not exist. That's always an important thing to remember. As flawed as a work can be, it can oftentimes give birth to something that is truly wonderful. In this case, an amazing fandom that has done so much for so many people. Curiosity time, what's your favorite book? If you have one, have you read all the books? Are you only a movie fan? There are so many questions, let me stop. As always, please answer as many as you can, and you know the drill. Number it if possible. I love a good essay comment, and I expect to get many with this. This is, as always, not a bashing space, and everything here is in good fun. We can all disagree, but fandom can of course be fundom. We just need to work to keep it that way. I still have the first ever edition of The Philosopher's Stone. My grandfather brought it back for me from England, and I thought it was the best book ever at the time. I was 9 years old. Thank you so much for taking some time of your day to spend it going back looking at some of these moments with me. I always appreciate it. Also, are you enjoying some of these lists? Because I'm kind of enjoying compiling all of these things into a listable format. Let me know if there are any other lists you need. And let me just tell you to please subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid, and stop telling you to do things. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you all when I can, and until then, let's get to the outro. Bye-bye. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all of my patrons, names on the side, for helping to make these videos possible. There are, as always, more videos coming soon, so until then, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.